Have you fallen into an open manhole recently? Do you find yourself in the company of strangers? Well, then you might very well be in the feature Underground. As always, my unalliterative name is Hunter Lanier, and I'm here once again with a new review, but this time a tad different in that I am not reviewing an upcoming movie, but I am reviewing an upcoming season of a new TV show. I am, of course, speaking of Daredevil: Born Again, which will premiere on March 4th, which is the day this will release, with its first 2 episodes, then air weekly, just like the old days. Disney went ahead and sent me the entire new season, so I figured I'd watch the whole damn thing and let you know my thoughts. Should there be any worries, this video will of course be totally spoiler free. I'm not even going to talk about the story arc of the season, and I won't even really talk about the things that happen in the first 2 episodes, which you might have already seen by the time this review releases. Now, normally, this isn't the type of thing that I would review on this channel, but the truth of the matter is, I do have a soft spot, a very soft, mushy spot, for the original Daredevil Netflix series, which, by the way, premiered 10 years ago now. Now, if you remember, during that time, 2015, Netflix was still in the honeymoon phase of its streaming, before it became a content mill of distraction media. You had House of Cards, you had Narcos, you had Orange is the New Black, which I never watched, but I heard was good. They brought back Arrested Development, which was exciting until it actually came out and it wasn't very good. It was a time when Netflix had more prestige than it currently does. And Daredevil fit in nicely. In fact, I would go so far as to say that that original Netflix series was better than all of those shows I just mentioned. Now, just to set expectations, because I will be comparing Born Again a lot to the Netflix series. The Netflix series, it was never as good as, say, The Sopranos or Mad Men or Deadwood. It wasn't on that very high level. It was on the lower end of prestige television, but its underdog characters and it taking place in the gutter of New York City, it set it apart from the rest of the comic book movies and TV at the time, and still does. As did, of course, its brutal violence and fight choreography, which wasn't just more calculated and cinematic than you were used to seeing on TV, but also just weightier and scrappier. The punches had impact, and microwaves were used as projectiles. The show came out in the wake of movies like The Raid, and the first John Wick movie had just come out, so you could tell that they were trying to replicate that acrobatic style of action, and to great effect, I think. I also happen to believe that the Matt Murdock Daredevil combo is one of the more interesting comic book characters, period. Not that I'm a comic book expert. Part of that is just the Catholicism angle, because whereas most superheroes are operating on a feeling of what is right and wrong, Daredevil actually has an ancient code, a code that he struggles to not just implement, but understand. Now, that brings us to Daredevil: Born Again. If you're anything like me, you're probably a little confused as to what this even is. Is it season 4 of Daredevil, or is it something entirely new? And the answer is that it's a little bit of both. Some of the characters and some of the storylines from the Daredevil Netflix series continue on in Daredevil: Born Again, while others are either totally shelved or greatly minimized. I will also say, as some good news, that if you were worried that the show would end up being greatly Disneyified in all of the variants of what that probably means to you, you can rest easy. I would not say the show is any more sanitized than it already was on Netflix. And, the Punisher says some things to Daredevil in this show that I'm guessing have never been said on a Disney Plus show before. I do have a prop. The show never gets as dark as the comic gets. I'm not a big comic book reader, but I did read this one a long time ago. And this is, to date, the best comic book I have ever read. I I'm not a big fan of comic book writing, but this is an example of one that does it right. But the show never gets as dark as this does. As for the violence, I would actually go so far as to say that Daredevil Born Again is more violent than the Netflix show. Now, if anything has been Disneyified, you do spend a lot of time in this season with I don't know how old they are, borderline late teenager, early 20 something characters. One of whom is the niece of the Ben Urich character who died in the original Netflix series, while the other is played by Michael Gandolfini, the son of the great James Gandolfini. And you spend a lot of time with those two characters. That's the most Disney-ish the show feels because they're very young and they're like kids and going to parties and stuff. None of that part of the show works, and I'll touch on that again later. Charlie Cox continues to be great as Daredevil. He continues to find that balance between the character's violent nature and pretending to be just a regular fella. The latter of which never quite feels believable, but I think that's the point. It's cliche to say at this stage in the game, but the idea that the superhero only really becomes his true self once he puts on the mask and is in disguise is very relevant to this show. Very quickly, I would like to just pass the old hat into the audience there. Throw in all your likes, your shares, your comments, your subscribes, if you're not. Everything helps the channel grow and contributes to the ongoing effort of making talking to you guys my full-time job. Aren't you jealous knowing that I'm talking to other people Monday through Friday, 9 to 5? While you stew on that, let's continue with the Daredevil Born Again review. Now, one of the most popular aspects of that original Netflix series, and one of its best aspects, was the action. While you still get some fun set pieces in Born Again, I don't think it ever lives up to that Netflix series, which had some truly memorable action set pieces. Part of that is because Daredevil, unlike most superheroes, he feels vulnerable. It seems like he takes as much as he gives. He's getting bruised, he's breaking bones, he's falling over. There was a sloppiness to the fights, almost a slapstick quality. But you could tell that they were intricately choreographed, which made it all that more impressive. I was also always very impressed with Charlie Cox's performance when he wasn't wearing the mask in those scenes because he has to continue pretending to be blind while he's doing all this action choreography. Where Born Again fails to live up to that, it's for two reasons. Either one thing is that the action in many cases is scaled up and it loses that original backyard fist fighting feel that this Netflix series had. It becomes a little overly polished and in some cases relies a little more on visual effects than the original did. In other cases, the action sequences just aren't as imaginative. The action is still fun, better than most of what you'll see on TV, but it does lose that quirky quality that the Netflix show had. Now, here's one of my biggest problems with the show. And I think I'm guessing this showed up in the trailers as well, so you might be dreading this. The show does not look great. The Netflix series had a very specific, dim, almost noirish look to it. A lot of shadows, a lot of blacks and reds and yellows, a lot of warm colors. It fit perfectly with the subject matter and the setting, and the idea that, yes, this is in this fantastical Marvel universe, but it's dark underbelly. Born Again, on the other hand, looks like it was shot by wedding photographers or the producers of the Today Show. It's very bright and fluorescent, like it was shot in an office. During each of the 9 episodes, I would find myself lamenting the show's color palette. In fact, I even went back and watched some clips of the original Netflix show just to make sure I wasn't looking back with rose-tinted glasses. And no, there is a stark difference between how the two shows look. Water break. Another big problem I have with this season is that, as I alluded to before, it shelves a lot of what worked best in that Netflix show. You'd think after 3 seasons, they'd have a good sample size to know what works and what doesn't. What should we continue with? What should we leave behind? But no, they throw out a lot of babies A lot of adorable babies with the soft reboot bathwater. The supporting cast of the original show has been mostly replaced by all new characters. And at best, these all new characters are boring, and at worst, they are downright irritating. Let's just take, for example, the Karen Page character from the original show. Played very well by Deborah Ann Woll. While she is in Born Again, she has a much diminished part. But when she's on screen, she has a fantastic presence and such a great dynamic with the Matt Murdock character. A dynamic he's not getting anywhere else with the new characters. Jon Bernthal's role as the Punisher in this new season is very minor, but just like Deborah Ann Woll, when he's on screen, he changes the dynamic of the show for the better and brings out the best in the Daredevil Matt Murdock character. There's also something to be said about the show lifting Matt Murdock out of the streets and into a penthouse. When we find him in Born Again, he's no longer an ambulance chaser. He is a successful, big-time lawyer. Wilson Fisk, to that same point, is no longer a underground mob boss. He is the mayor of New York City. This not only takes Matt and Kingpin out of the gutters, but the show too. And that was always where the show got a lot of its personality. I did read that the initial idea for this show was that it was going to be much lighter in tone than the Netflix series and be a procedural show. You can see the traces of this throughout the season, especially in episode 5, which is basically a standalone episode and much lighter in tone. I'm guessing that's going to be everyone's least favorite episode. Speaking of the episodes, I would say that episodes 1 through 4 are the best episodes of the season, as well as the season finale, which has some of the best stuff of the whole season in it, although I wasn't quite as happy with where the pieces end up falling at the end. Oh, and one last thing, they do change the opening credit sequence from the original Netflix show, and it's not nearly as good anymore. That original sequence with the blood dripping and revealing the shapes was far more creative than what it is now, which is stone statues rebuilding themselves from rubble. Boring. Welp, those are all my thoughts on this entire season of Daredevil Born Again. Compared to the original Netflix run, the show, I think, has definitely fallen a few pegs. But if you put it up next to the rest of the recent Disney Marvel output, it looks a lot more attractive. It is now time for you to let me know your thoughts on my thoughts down in the comments below. Do you have any questions about the show that I didn't cover? As the season rolls along, you can come back here and ask me something that you might be curious about. Next up, I will be reviewing Steven Soderbergh's new movie, Black Bag, starring Michael Fassbender and Cate Blanchett. That review should be out March 11th, I believe. I'm also going to be watching the new Looney Tunes movie. They sent it to me. I think it's called The Day the Earth Blew Up or something. I don't know if I'll do a review of that. It depends on how much I like the movie. But until then, regardless, I would like to remind you that every day underground is a good day.